everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Talk Astrology with KeplerCollege teachers. Today, we are delighted to introduce Maria Blaquier. Maria is a specialist in humanistic, Draconic, and traditional astrology, and she is also an author, lecturer, and director. So thank you so much, Maria, for joining us today, and how are you doing?
Fine, thanks. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for being here. So the first question we've got for you today is that on April 9th, you'll be teaching a 10-week Horary course. So for any prospective students out there, how would you describe those classes and what do you hope students get from the course?
Yes, of course. Well, this is an introductory course because Horary is quite, I won't say difficult, but it's a technique that needs a lot of practice. So what I'm going to be doing in this course is introducing Horary and giving I will be giving the students the foundations for them to practice, you know. It isn't that you take a 10-week course in Horary and you're an expert. No, you need to practice a lot to be a good Horary astrologer. But I'm committed to giving students the foundations of the technique, because Horary is a technique that has specific rules different from other branches of astrology. So you need to work with those rules and to know them well. You know, we have considerations before judgment, we have planetary hours, we have radicality, a lot of concepts that are not present in other branches of astrology. Absolutely,
absolutely. So you would say even a prerequisite for students to begin would be having a solid foundation in the fundamentals, the basics, the houses, the signs, planetary condition, dignities, debilities, motion, all those kind of things, to have at least a solid understanding. Correct?
At the end of the course, at the end of the workshop, their astrology will be more consistent. That is what I find with my students. I've been teaching Horary for many, many years in the Spanish-speaking community, of course. And I see that sometimes astrologists say to me, I've been doing astrology for 20 years, but this is the first time that I feel that I really know what I'm talking about, you know?
Wonderful.
Because Horary astrology, we're going to look into dignities, fortitudes, the speed of the planets, combustion, so many details that sometimes are not present in other approaches to astrology.
Absolutely. And you have a couple of slides that you'd like to share, maybe just to delve deeper into
yes, I have many slides, but I'm only going to share, because I have 4 planets in Virgo, so I have many slides. All my information is very organized, but I'm going to share just a few slides. So when I'm talking about Horary, I'm talking about a technique that was developed at the beginning of our era. And we're going to be looking at dignities of the planets, planetary hours, malefic and benefic planets, and why are they malefic and benefics? Why is Saturn considered a malefic? We're going to be using only some kind of aspects and not others, only the classical planets, etc. And I find that people, when they study Horary, astrologers, you need to be an astrologer to study Horary, you know, you need to have you need to be someone who's been doing astrology for a couple of years at least. And they get so amazed with the use of perceptions in Horary. Okay. Yes. And I love Horary because it describes reality as it is. So it's so truthful. I mean, if you make a mistake as an astrologer, the client is going to find out. And I love that. Because I think it's honest.
You've got nowhere to hide, right?
Exactly. And I love that. I think it's honest. And I think that the astrologer is really testing himself.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good thing, because we're looking, there's so much blah 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 out there, you know, and we're really committed to another kind of astrology, an astrology that is serious and consistent.
So when you're working with clients, I mean, they will come back to you and say, you know, was that correct? You know, and and finding out your own, you know, skill level or whatever that might be.
Yeah. And one learns a lot that way, you know, making corrections. Yes. Okay. So as I said, this is a branch of traditional astrology, and it uses the chart of the moment that the question was asked to answer specific questions. Okay, and we are going to be looking at these authors, especially William Lilly, the author of Christian Astrology, but we're going to also be citing Ptolemy, Dorotheus, and other authors. Personally, I love Deborah Holding. I took the STA practitioners level 3 times. Now I have a diploma. The diploma, STA diploma Horary. What do you call that? The Horary diploma. Well, I
wonderful.
don't remember. Yeah. Okay, you take my point. And also I'm finishing the master's degree. Wow. And all that I'm doing with Deborah Holding. But I also like Anthony Lewis a lot, and Wade Caves. We're going to be looking at their approaches, you know. For instance, sometimes you see that, for instance, William Lilly says something in Christian astrology, but Lee Lemon says, okay, I've been testing this and I really don't think this is the way you should do it. You could, okay. So we're going to be looking at that as well. Wonderful. And this is, of course, the famous William Lilly, the father of astrology. Okay. And that's it. So we're going to be answering questions that the astrologer receives and understands. And the astrologer, what an astrologer does is he casts the horary chart for the time and place where he is, for the moment in which he understood the question. Because the question was born, it's like, this is like a natal chart. Something is being born, but this is a question that's being born. But the astrologer is the one who is capable of delineating or reading that chart. So we're going to use that time and place where the astrologer is. And I can show you examples if you would like.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Yes. Let's look at some examples.
For instance, this is the chart of a woman who called me. She was desperate because she had lost her husband's ID card.
Ah.
Okay, so what we do, okay, I live in Buenos Aires, Argentina, so that's the place I used to cast this chart. And what we do in general terms in Horary astrology is the ascendant and its ruler represents the person who is the person who is asking the question.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this case, the lady who asked the question is going to be represented by the moon. Okay, and the identity card, because it's the husband's identity card, is going to be represented by the 8th house, because the husband is the 7th house and his possessions are represented by the 8th. Right. So we're going to use Jupiter, the traditional ruler of Pisces, to represent the card. And we're going to try and see if there are any connections between the moon and Jupiter. Okay. Right. And also, okay, and what needs to happen before that happens? For instance, this moon is going to trine Jupiter, but before doing that, it needs to change from Gemini into Cancer. Okay. And we're going to find where to look for that card. Well, Jupiter, the significator of the card, is in Pisces, so near water. You know?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe in the bathroom, in the laundry. We're also going to use, for instance, the 4th house, which according to William Lilly is the place where the object was left, you know?
Oh, right.
So okay, so we're going to use Scorpio and its ruler, Mars. And Mars, again, is in a water sign. So water is emphasized. This is near the kitchen, the laundry, the bathroom, near a place where there's water. Okay, and you can see that Jupiter is very strong because it's in its own sign. And that means that the card is in a very good condition. It isn't that the dog has eaten the card and you will never find it again. Yeah. Good condition because Jupiter is strong.
And you can take into account angularity. So, you know, 7th house angularity as well. Right.
So the fact that it is in an angle means that it's in a place that she frequents. It's in a place that it's easy to find, etc. Of course. Okay. And so I told her all these things. I said that she would change her attitude because the moon is about to change from Gemini to Cancer. And she would need to look for the card again, because it's the moon that is going towards Jupiter. Where the other way around, the card would fall on her lap. But she needs to go towards the card.
Right.
And once, okay, and I told her to look in places where places that are, it's in the house. I said it's in the house because Jupiter is in an angle, so don't worry about that. It's in a good condition and it's near water. And she found it in the laundry. Okay?
Is that right?
And it took her 5 minutes to find it. One of the uses of Horary. It can be so useful. Okay.
Absolutely.
And also, if you look at the last context, that the moon is the planet that is representing this lady. So the moon is separating from Saturn, from Mercury, and from Neptune. The fact that it's separating from Saturn, the ruler of the seventh, that's the husband, means that the husband gave the card to her. This is true. Okay, so her last contact was to the husband. Then to Mercury, and she lost the card because she was helping her children to get their homework done. So that is typical of Mercury. Mercury represents small children and things related to books, etc.
Right.
Okay. And then Neptune, she was really in a scattered frame of mind, confused, because she had been doing so many things. Well, the moon is in Gemini, so we already know that she had been doing many
mutable
things.
sign. There's a lot going on. Yeah,
a lot of multitasking, etc. And that's it. It took her 5 minutes to find the card. So this is one of the uses of Horary, but you can also find many other uses. For instance, and also I had a case in which my father-in-law is an engineer, and he can't believe I'm an astrologer, you know. He simply can't understand that. And he had lost his wallet, and he was desperate. So it took me 2 minutes, and I look at the chart and said, listen, I did the chart for him, so I had to derive the houses. That is something that we could speak about. I mean, I asked the question on behalf of my father-in-law. So what I did was I used the 10th, that is the house that represents the father-in-law, and the 11th would be his wallet. And I saw that it was in the car. You could see that it was in the car. And the planet that represented the wallet was in its fall, its sign of fall. So I said, it fell in the car. And there it was. So
anybody in your family loses anything, they're calling you up. They're saying, Maria.
All the time. Okay, and this is a chart that I love, because this is a chart of a very famous football match that is played in Argentina every now and again. It's called the Super Classic. It's very popular. People from all over the world come to look at this event.
I know it very well. And soccer for our American audience.
Yes, soccer. We are just fans, you know. This is like we get so excited whenever there is this kind of match. And so I asked who would win. And because the match was going to be played at the River Stadium, I took the ascendant and Jupiter, its ruler, to represent River. And Boca, the enemy, is represented by the 7th house of enemies. Okay, so Mercury represents Boca. And I looked at this chart and was a bit impressed, because both planets were in the 12th. And that is a house that is a house of things that are hidden. And this is a very public event. I had expected the planets to be either in the 1st or in the 5th, because we're talking about sports. And
so angular and visible to the public, you
visible,
know, even
angular, or at least in a very strong house like like the 5th. Okay, but I saw both planets in the 12th, and also I noticed that they were combust, because they were very, very near the sun. Again, there's a problem that's not visible.
And that's a very important rule in Horary, correct. That, and it, you know, especially the queer or the queer, it's any combustion of any of the signifiers is very is an important issue.
Yes, that's what William Lilly says. It's a terrible thing because the planet is not free to act. Because planets can perform because they have light. And when they're very near the sun, they lose their ability to shine.
Yeah.
So that is a very a great weakness. So I was a bit worried about this chart. This didn't feel to me like the chart of a very popular, open, famous event. And I looked at the moon and noticed that the moon was about to square Mars. And Mars was the most angular planet in this chart. And angularity gives strength to a planet. So at the root of the matter, not visible, but at the root of the matter, because we're talking about the IC, something that is at the root of the matter, we had an aggressive planet. We had Mars. But what I thought was maybe there will be heavy rain. Buenos Aires is a city where we have very violent storms, and the match will have to be postponed. That was my first thought. But what happened was that as the bus with the Boca players was arriving at the River Plate Stadium, that bus was attacked, as you can see in the picture. And the players, the football players they were attacked and they suffered from this. And so the match had to be cancelled, and it was played many months later in Spain, in Madrid. Okay.
Wow.
So what we could see from this is that this is something that is subject to enemies, and we still don't know what is going to happen to them, but they won't be able to perform because they're 12s, they are combust. There are many, many problems in this chart. And of the two, I predicted that River would win because Jupiter is in Sag, and Mercury, the planet that signifies Boca, is also in Sag. Jupiter is in its own domicile, but Mercury is in its exile. It's weak. Okay, so and that's what happened when they played in Spain. River won the match.
And River won the match. Wow. So not only seeing the 12th house issues, that initial match didn't even start, but when it did eventually start again, you said Jupiter domicile, you know, Mercury's having some issues there, retrograde, detriment, and they actually lost the game as well. This is such a wonderful example. And again, the violence as well. You've got Mars involved in the square aspects with the moon co-signifier. And this is just an amazing example.
The moment of the attack, I have the exact moment of the attack because this was in all the news, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And at the exact moment of the attack, the moon was at 23 degrees of Gemini. And that's the degree of the descendant.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow.
Yes, that was impressive. Okay, so these are examples of Horary charts, but of course, the most common questions are about relationships, are about profession, work, children. Will I be able to get pregnant? Where is my dog? Where is my cat? You know, but this is a very, very useful technique.
That's fantastic. And I think you had another one, a client asking about marriage. Was that correct? I don't know if you've got.
Oh, okay. I will have to look that one up. I didn't.
Oh, that's fine. I really enjoyed that one. I love these examples.
Yes, they're great. They're great. Yes, I had another one. A woman was asking if she should get married. Okay, so it's always important to have context.
Oh, yeah.
Why are you asking this? How long have you been in this relationship, etc.? You know, it's important for we are astrologers. We don't have to know the details if the consultant didn't tell us the details. So it's important to have the context of the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So this is a course that is divided into 10 sessions of 90 or 100, 2 hours. I think they last 2 hours. And I will give all the fundamentals, and of course, we're going to also practice. We're going to have charts to practice, and also there is a forum, and that is very, very useful because students can ask questions and can put their own examples and how they approach the chart, and I can help them. Well, you know,
Yeah,
because you need to be really, you need to go in a very, very precise way, you know.
because there are a lot of rules to follow,
yes,
and you go through the explanations of the rules and the ways of looking at the charts.
It's a step-by-step, it's a step-by-step process.
Yeah.
Okay, and this isn't, because I see this with my students, this isn't psychological astrology. It's not because, for instance, in one of the examples I showed, the querent was represented by the moon in Gemini. It isn't that she is interested in, I don't know, that she has a very strong relationship with her siblings. No, we're not talking about that.
Right.
The moon in Gemini described, she is a bit fat, and that's typical of the moon because the moon tends to roundness. It's you know, it describes the querent, but you wouldn't give it a psychological point of view. We're interested in facts, you know.
Absolutely, yeah, and solid outcomes of what you talked about. So, and as you were reiterating before, there seems to be so many moving parts when you're delineating the Horary chart. I mean, because you've got, like you said, planetary condition, you know, all the houses, angularities, and also, you know, planetary motion. Because I think you were talking about an example where I think Mercury was stationing to go retrograde, and that changes the whole dynamic of your.
That means that the person is. Imagine that you were asking about a relationship, and the querent is represented by a planet that is stationing to go retrograde. She changes her mind.
Yeah, I love that, because when I first looked at it, I think it was, you know, Mercury as an applying trine to Jupiter, and then you pointed out, actually, with the planetary motions slowing down Mercury to turn retrograde, to change her mind and move towards, I think, Venus, moving back to I think another partner you described as well. But it was such a fascinating example, and my mind was blown.
And you know that, yes, but apart from that, you'll never look at a natal chart in the same way, because whenever you look at a natal chart and you see that Mercury is in front of the sun, but it's like 25 degrees away from the sun, you know that it's going to retrograde soon when that person is a child. And that, in terms of secondary progressions, you know, that means that you have to pay attention to that. I mean, you never look at a natal chart in the same way, because you'll have all the motion of the planets in your head. You'll pay attention to details that you weren't aware of.
Absolutely. And through my studies, my secondary progressed Mercury was retrograde for 20 years, and it was only last year it's gone direct. So I was like, you know, I know all this right now, you know.
Of course.
Well, those very,
you know, maybe you're an astrologer and you see that your client has a wonderful Mercury in Virgo. Okay? And the sun is at 1 degree of Virgo, and Mercury is at 22 degrees of Virgo. And this is a person who never speaks, who's very intelligent, of course, but she has difficulty relating to others, and that's because her Mercury turned retrograde by secondary progressions when she was a child.
It's so fascinating, and like I said, your examples are so wonderful. And again, so it's the class will start on April 9th, and it's 2 hours a class, and it's for 10 weeks every Saturday. Is that correct?
No, it's on Mondays.
Oh, sorry, every Monday, is that right? So that's not April, is that April 9th then? Let me see.
I don't have my book here, but it's on Mondays, and it's for 10. Draconic was going to be on Saturdays, but it's
okay, so that might be the 11th of April, that might be the start. But in the video description, I'll put the link to the class below, so anyone can look through and see where to look. Fantastic. So, and speaking of Draconic, and that's another aspect of astrology you'll be talking about. Is this going to be a workshop that you'll be doing with Kepler, this series?
This is a workshop that I've already recorded in English, and I've added subtitles in English as well.
Wonderful.
And this is one of the, I've been doing Draconic for 25 years. All of a sudden, everybody's interested in Draconic, but it wasn't very well known.
Sure.
And I find it's fascinating because it's another way of looking at the chart. You have different zodiacs, of course.
Yeah.
We mostly use the tropical zodiac, but you can also use the zodiac of the lunar nodes, which is related to the moon. So the Draconic chart has to do with memory, has to do with your emotions, has to do with your inner motivations, and it's like a force that is acting behind the scenes. You know, it isn't obvious, but it's there. And whenever you see that a Draconic planet is making an aspect to a planet in your chart, you're going to feel that motivation. For instance, LeBron James, you know, he has the sun at 8 degrees of Capricorn, and he has Draconic Mars also at 8 degrees of Capricorn.
Wow.
So his identity is linked to Mars, to being the best, to being a warrior, you know?
Sure, yeah.
And and that also, it's at 8 degrees of Capricorn, we have a fixed star, Phases, that has to do with problems in the eyesight. And he has a lot of problems with the eyesight, with his eyesight. And that is the link between Mars and Phases, because if you look at pictures of him, his eyes get red, and that's Mars. You know. And then, for instance, you also have you have Margaret Atwood, the Canadian writer. When you look at her chart, you see that her ascendant is in Gemini and Mercury is in Sag, conjunct Venus. And when I first saw her natal chart, I wondered, how can somebody who has Gemini rising and Mercury conjunct Venus in Sag write the kind of books that she writes, that are all about power and are about abuse, etc. And when you look at her Draconic chart, she has Scorpio rising, she has Pluto in the 3rd, Mars, Draconic Mars conjunct tropical Pluto, you know, and you start,
so it just gives you extra layers of interpretation. And I need to go to that workshop. I need to find out.
And you also need to look at the transits. Draconic transits are incredible because, for instance, on the day of, you know, that AUKUS, is that how you pronounce it, AUKUS, that there was an agreement between the United States, the UK, and Australia, I think it was in November, that involved submarines.
Oh, it was the deal between, I think it annoyed a lot of other nations. I think France got annoyed that the UK, the US, and Australia were coming a pact.
So when you looked at the chart of the moment in which the president of the United States made that announcement, you had Aquarius rising. There were, all the planets were in air signs, so maybe some of, well, you probably had some planets in Capricorn, I don't remember. This is a treaty that involved submarines. And when you looked at the Draconic chart, Scorpio was rising, you had the moon in Scorpio, you started to, and the Scorpio wasn't rising. What was rising was the last degree of Aquarius, but you had Saturn and the moon in Scorpio, and on the descendant you had 29 degrees of Leo, or 0 degrees of Virgo, I don't recall, and that's the place where you have the star Regulus. And we are talking about a very, very powerful opponent. And you can see that in the tropical chart.
Fascinating.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And also I've been testing secondary progressions, but I didn't include those in the workshop because I still need to work with those. But I have included transits, Draconic transits on the Draconic chart, Draconic transits on the tropical chart. tropical transits on the Draconic chart, I mean, there are so many possibilities.
Wow.
Another example that I love is Draconic synastry. For instance, Meghan and Prince Harry, when you combine their charts, you're going to see that Mars and Pluto are involved in the tropical charts. You know, Meghan's Mars is right on Prince Harry's descendant, and his Pluto. That's what's going on the surface.
Right.
But when you look at the Draconic synastry, what's happening is that his Uranus is conjunct her sun, and her sun, her Uranus is opposite his sun. So this is about Uranus. This is about leaving the royal family in a way that was completely unexpected.
Sudden shake up, and it was leaving, you know, our establishment royal, you know, they're all pulling their hair out.
I compared their tropical charts and I didn't find Uranus. Where is Uranus? Because this was I think it was called the Meghan Gate or something. It was completely unexpected. Where is Uranus? And it's not there in the tropical chart, but it's in the Draconic synastry. It's really amazing because we're talking about contexts between planets with no more than 3 degrees of orb. They're very tight. Exact, very tight orbs, and it works. I'm about to present at the OPA, you know, the organization of.
Wonderful.
I'm about to present a work I've been doing for the last 20 years, a research on how to discern charts of twins using Draconic astrology. I think I found the solution to the problem of twins in astrology, and it's by using Draconic.
That's so fascinating. I'm going to have to come along and find out in more detail. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So the last question I was, sorry, go ahead.
No. Okay.
So one of the questions I like to ask when people come on the show is I like to ask, how did you begin your astrological journey? How your beginnings? You said you've been in astrology for a long time.
Yes,
and, I'm just curious.
In 1987. So I was a student of biology. My father is a very famous scientist in my country, and I worked with him and I was studying biology. And a very close friend of mine asked me to go to the astrologer with her because she was in love with the astrologer's son. And she wanted
it all starts with love, right?
Yeah, and she wanted an excuse to go visit him. So I was the excuse. And my mind was blown away because I couldn't believe what I was experiencing. And I began studying astrology. I left my studies at university. I promised my dad that I was going to do this to the best of my ability. And it was hard because in Argentina, there weren't many books. You know, I needed to travel to Europe to get books. But I studied and I'm very persistent. And this is something that, I mean, it's like a sort of addiction. I can't let it go, you know? And also what I find that is so wonderful is that you always have something new to study. This never ends. And so I can see myself as an 80-year-old studying astrology, you know?
That's so wonderful. And I think my generation, we're, you know, been so grateful for places like, you know, KeplerCollege and other organizations where we can speak with, you know, fantastic astrologers as yourself and other generations who maybe didn't have that same access to the, you know, different techniques or different way of doing things. But now my generation can come in to schools like KeplerCollege and have such an array and different specialized, you know, subjects and like you say, a whole array of different subjects that it's like a kid in a candy shop. It's like, oh, that one, that one.
It's wonderful. And technology, because I had to do my charts by hand, you know. There weren't computers, there wasn't internet, there wasn't Wi-Fi. So I did everything by hand.
Wow.
Reading a chart took me forever because first I had to do the calculations by hand, etc. Nowadays you have all that information in the internet, all these schools like KeplerCollege that are so wonderful at providing information and providing education. I'm really grateful for what's going on with astrology, and the new generations have a great opportunity.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful. And actually, KeplerCollege made us do charts by hand, so we had to go through the calculations. But I actually, as long as it takes, I felt quite intimate with the chart. You know, when you're calculating by hand and you're going through the ephemeris and you're doing it, and you do, you really do. But I thought, wow, I can't imagine having to, you know, draw it by hand every single chart that you did at the beginning. So that's amazing.
I my tables, you know, because we had graphics and tables and for different latitudes. It was really hard work.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, but I really enjoyed it, and I think that it was worth it because there's nothing more wonderful than astrology. I mean,
I wholeheartedly agree. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for Maria for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And again, we'll put the class descriptions below. So for anyone who can just click on the link, you can sign up. And this will be starting in the spring semester, and it'll be going on for 10 weeks. And then we'll also have the Draconic workshops going on as well. So look underneath for the descriptions. And again, if anyone, you know, if you like the videos, please subscribe, click the bell, and follow us for extra content. So thank you very much for joining us, and have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.